Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first show of 2025, and it's an exciting year already coming up. We have a great guest tonight, Dean Alioto, a great friend of mine and the show. Some of you may remember when I was out for surgery, Dean filled in for, I think it was like a month or something. So anyway, it's really great welcoming him back. He has a new documentary that's being released on Apple TV tomorrow called The Alien Perspective Part 1. It's a two-part series, and he has a standalone. We'll talk about all of that coming up here in just a minute. So when I say it's kind of exciting, well, right off the bat, we have a couple of really interesting interviews coming up. I'm going to be, Donna and I are going over, my producer Donna and better half, I'll call her. We're going over to Vermont to do an in-studio show with James Fox coming up next Tuesday. And the following week, I have Ryan Graves finally is going to be in studio, and we're going to be running that show on the 21st. I do believe that's going to be a two-part show, 1 hour with Ryan Graves and another hour with someone else involved in the Nova, What is UFOs? I believe that's what that's called. That's released on January 22nd. And I have a few comments about that, but I have to wait because I get to see things sometimes screener ahead of time. And I am actually going to be doing a different show. I'll talk about that at some point. That's going to be coming up in February on a couple of things in that show. We're going to be talking about FLIR videos. I have David Falch and Robert Powell. That's 21st of February. We're going to be talking about the FLIR videos, and should be very interesting, and the Aguadilla and many more UFO incidents. I want to thank everyone that helps out with the show. I really appreciate it. All those who listen, and our archives. I got to tell you, our archives on Spreaker are getting a lot of listens these days. There's over 600 of them. And, but, I look at each week that goes by, and there's, thousands and thousands of listens in the old archive. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate anyone who listens to the show and listens to the archives and recent shows. And you can always see us here on YouTube every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And also we're on a bunch of other platforms, including KGRA Radio. And I think we're on Twitter. And speaking of that, when I get settled down in South Carolina, I'm going to start a Twitter Spaces. I'm part of helping out Darcy Weir with his. He's going to be on at least my initial show coming up when I start that. That's going to be on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it consistently, but I'm really enjoying the interaction with the Twitter listeners in these that we have. Twitter Spaces. I never even had heard of it, but people they kind of raise their hand and they can talk for a while. There's some really interesting points a lot of these people are making. Some people are really into the topic and know what they're talking about. And then there's others. No, just kidding. But anyway, I am ready to bring in the one and only Dean Alioto. Dean, welcome.
Thank you. How you doing, Martin?
I'm doing great. Always good to see you, Dean.
Likewise, brother.
Yeah. And congratulations on your release that's coming out tomorrow. And I feel kind of honored because you told me I'd be the first one to interview you on this, and you've actually turned people down. So that's how I feel honored. Yes.
I have. I've turned down, let's see.
You don't have to name names.
Who else? Fox News, CNN, ABC, NBC.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. It's you, Martin. So.
Yeah. So, and I'll be forever grateful for you taking over the podcast so people still had a wonderful show to listen to while I was gone. That was that's coming up on, that was over two and a half years ago now.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that. Yeah. 2 years and 3 or 4 months.
Happy to fill in and happy that you came back and replaced me.
Yes. But out of that, this is a really interesting thing. I'd like for you to talk about this. Spawned an idea for a comedy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. After being 5 years in the documentary space for what ended up being 4 different documentaries, I needed a break. I was burnt. And after doing your podcast, I was encouraged maybe mistakenly, to do my own podcast. So I became obsessed with setting this up, getting the right name, the right logo, all that stuff. And my girlfriend Allie looked over at me one night and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing my research to create my podcast." And she says, No. Why are you doing this? And I said, "Well, it's going to be fun. That's why I'm doing this." And she says, "Babe, it doesn't look fun." And I thought about it for a second. I went, "Yeah, screw this." And because if you're going to do a podcast, you got to do it for all the right reasons. You can't put any expectations on it. You can't put any stress around it. It's got to be this natural thing. And I realized that I was approaching it like I would filmmaking, like we're ramping up for a production, which is always very stressful. And so I had spent months doing this, and mad respect, mad props for everyone who does, podcasts, let alone in this space. And so after 4 months, I saw the actors and directors strike was on the horizon. And I thought, well, if I don't shoot something now, after 5 years, I'm probably not going to do another indie film for another 2 or 3 years. And so I took that experience and I wrote this story about a paranormal investigator, podcaster, who is obsessed with getting 100,000 subscribers and more. And he debunks the supernatural. That's his whole shtick. And he ends up meeting up with an associate professor who believes he can prove that there is no afterlife. And the experiment that he does to quantify it goes wrong, goes bad. And so it becomes this dark buddy kind of like an American Werewolf in London project, which the film got finished and we screened at Fright Fest, had a world premiere last June in London. And now we are going to be coming out sometime this year, a theatrical release, it looks like, with possibly the same people who did Terrifier 3. So we'll see. But anyway, yeah, so it's all because of you, and this is your fault, Martin.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how life takes little twists and turns along the way. One thing leads into another. And, it's pretty interesting how that always goes. I just make an adjustment in my camera here. But the show that you have out released tomorrow, you've been working on that a long time. I remember when you first started working on that. And you have, Michio Kaku. And I'd like to run a little teaser for that, a little trailer when you're ready.
Oh, let's rock it right now.
Oh, right now. Okay. All right. So this company changed things here. So here it is. I got it.
It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before.
Everything started out normally. He seemed upset and started pointing toward Rendlesham Forest.
We just looked at each other for a minute and looked back up at the sky.
There was no sound at all.
Multiple witnesses, military personnel.
My emotions were all over the place. Scared to in awe.
Most science documentaries look at an encounter with extraterrestrial civilization from our point of view. But let's turn it upside down.
Simply the hypothesis that we live in a computer simulation.
The question comes up, who created the simulation?
It was observing us. It was communicating. My questions are, where'd it come from?
Could they maybe be us in the future?
We cannot assume that they're just 100 years more advanced than us.
If aliens are intelligent, they're also curious.
Here we are, we come in peace.
The front page of the New York Times was a big deal.
I don't know whether there are other countries that would like to get their hands on this.
What are the next steps that NASA is going to do? What are the next steps that the community is going to do?
This is stuff that belongs to humanity.
Nice piece.
Thank
Yes.
you, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So, a lot of people have no idea how much work is involved in these. And I visited you at your house, and I saw your big screen thing where you're doing this editing, and it's like a million things going on it at once. And, James Fox has showed a couple of times with himself, behind the editing board or whatever you want to call that. And God, there's so much stuff to it. And are you self-taught in a lot of that, or did you get some type of training, or how's all that?
It is. I mean, now you can go online on YouTube and you can learn pretty much anything. I mean, that's actually how I learned color grading, was doing that. But editing was self-taught, taking some courses. Yeah, I mean, you have to these days. When I started out in the business, it was, I'm a writer, I'm a director, and that was what you did. And the thing is, whatever shortens the amount of time between the concept and being able to show people that concept on screen, I'm all for. And so you kind of empower yourself when you learn how to operate cameras, and you learn how to light and to edit. And sometimes you're doing music as well. And so but it's done in concert with some really talented folks as well. So it's not all you.
Right. And you had animation done. I know that took a long time. I think that was one of the things that was holding you back, right? Getting the animation done.
Yeah. So I had done crime shows for like 20 years, and did docs for A&E, Bravo, Discovery, etc. And I wanted to do something that was different than the reenactments that I had done before. Because doing a reenactment with actors is always kind of dodgy, right? Because you have to find an actor that looks like the person you're interviewing, and maybe it was 20 years before that, so they got to look different, and hopefully they can act. And it becomes just a real kind of challenge. And I thought, no, I want to see what James Peniston, when he was in Rendlesham Forest, had security detail and going out and touching this craft. I want to see what he looked like back then. I want to contextualize it. And so one of my favorite films was the Oscar-winning documentary called Searching for Sugarman. And I tracked down the animator because they had done some animation in it, like world-class animation. And so I tracked this guy down, Arvid Steen, and I reached out to him and I said, dude, is there someone that you work with that you can, help me out? Because, I'm doing this thing. Because I didn't think he was going to be interested in doing a UFO science doc. And I was supposed to have a 5-minute conversation with him. And 45 minutes later, he said, I must do this. I'm doing this.
Wow.
And what he brought to it was, we had our world premiere in Los Angeles. And the bulk of the audience was like, oh my God, I now know what the Tic Tac incident was like. Because up until now, it's really only been seeing the FLIR footage, right? Where the Tic Tac moves out of frame, or you hear, oh gosh, look at it, it's rotating, all of that stuff, which is amazing. But I want to be with Dave Fravor, Commander Dave Fravor, in the jet fighter. And so how I did that was to work with this animator and storyboard and create what that was like to be in the back seat of Dave Fravor's jet as the Tic Tac flies across his windshield in slow motion, take it in slow motion, and then do it also from the craft's perspective, looking at Fravor, which is something that you can't do with doing regular, film reenactments. So it opened me up. It was the first time I'd ever done animation before, and now I swear by it. And this is 2D animation; it's not 3D. This is someone drawing every single, cell and having an animator help animate it. So it kind of brought these stories that we've heard before to life, in addition to the new and fresh interviews that I did. And I made a point of asking questions about aspects of these incidences that I hadn't heard before, or that people had said, I really want to know what it was like to me in the forest, or, et cetera. So anyway, so that animation took a long time, and it was part of why it took 7 years from start to finish. I mean, I met you. You were the first podcast that I did in 2018.
Right.
In this with Stan Freeman and
oh yes, right there in Phoenix, we did that. Yeah, that was a blast.
Oh,
yeah, I still have that. That's still up on YouTube. I think there's, 70,000 views or something of that one.
I not received a penny of residuals, so thank you for tipping me off. Make a note of that. Yeah, so it was really that was the moment, where I came in and again, why do another documentary? There are way too many in this space, no pun intended. And I didn't go to the UFO Congress thinking, I was going to, go out and do a documentary. It was just because I'd done documentaries, I hadn't seen anything explored in the space of what I normally do structurally wise. And because I do independent films as well, I wanted to be very cinematic. And so I looked at all the documentaries that have been out there. And the one thing they all share in common and succeed to a great degree is they're from the human's perspective. And I think we're all kind of curious why they're visiting us. What would that be? How would we try and answer what their perspective is? And so the title just popped up. The Alien
I remember you were in touch with me when you were kicking around titles. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I started in 2018 doing interviews. Travis Taylor and Nick Pope were the first ones that I did. And then that became Sean Cahill and some other people and Harvard professors. And then it just went on. And I thought, well, I'm going to crank this out in 9 months. It'll be 15 interviews and I'll be done. And I was given a Fox crap because I'd been one of the many people that had consulted on his film. And I said, dude, 8 years to do this documentary? That's not sustainable. You got to get it out there. And here I am.
He listened to you, obviously.
Well, yeah. Well, if that was
now he's putting them out in every 9 months or something.
Yeah, he's crushing it. Yeah. And so I'm the one that's bad example. I'm doing it. So I curse myself, the hubris of me. So anyway, it took that long because it went from 1 feature to 2 and then to 3, and Netflix wanted it, but they wanted to finish editing the other 2. And thanks to Leslie Kane, and we can talk about that later, it completely got reassembled and became something bigger. And I didn't feel comfortable passing it over when each of these episodes was its own journey. And anyway, it ended up being 4 episodes. And then I went, okay, hold on. What are we looking at here? And then I had to kind of separate some that were too far in one aspect of it and, ones that were a completely different story. And so right now, tomorrow, Wednesday, January 8th, The Alien Perspective drops on Amazon and Apple TV. And then around May, part 2, which is a completely different vibe, drops. And so then the other 2 episodes became separate movies. One is all about experiencers, and that's called The Experiencers. And now the other one is a documentary on John Mack. And in each of these episodes, I promise the viewers that there's some mic drops in each project, each show that I've not seen before, and I'm hoping that others haven't seen. And so the ultimate goal here is to take audiences that are new to the genre and be, it's kind of gateway. So we start at NASA, and then we, migrate to the simulated reality hypothesis and learn, are we living in a simulation? Who created the simulation? And then it goes on from there, and it just branches out to more and more other alternatives, let's say. And there's a thread that's going throughout with Kevin Knuth. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you're kind of teasing the episode 2.
Yeah. And it wasn't by design. It just ended up being that way. It made much more sense to separate these projects.
Yeah. I saw that and I thought, oh, yeah, that's going to make me want to watch the season 2. I don't want to give too much away, but I mean, it's basically, I guess you can talk about it a little bit. Materials we're talking about, which is always a fascinating thing, but then I'm always skeptical myself of any type of materials as well. So at the same time, so, and the conclusions from this, I don't, but you haven't even shared that, even with your buddy, Martin. So
I wish I did, but I had myself regressed through hypnosis. OSI came out and gave me sodium pentothal. I haven't a clue how it ends. So it's going to be new to me too.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah. I can tell you that, there is material, and you can see in the trailer, it's in like a shoebox. We're going to get the final results of what this material is. And there's a lot of great people who do analyze material, like Gary Nolan. However, I wanted to go to someone who is a pioneer in extraterrestrial material. And what I mean by that is someone who only studies asteroids and meteorites and metals. And this guy, what's genius about him is he's discovered how to drill down, because the modern technology that we have right now would only take you back so far with regards to the origin or the date of how long you could date something. So it would be approximate, like it's within a few thousand years or maybe a million years or so. He was able to pinpoint it. And so we did a blind Pepsi test. Literally, it's the first time that I'm aware of where someone's gone and given them samples and said, take a look at it and let us know what it is, and do a full round. And then he did his own round, a separate one with a separate test. And so we feel pretty confident about the conclusions.
Wow. Gary Nolan is not a metallurgist. He's it's wonderful. He's at Stanford, he's well respected and all that. So I was always wondering why he was getting involved in that aspect of it. I do think his research on the what I want to say, the brain changes, that I don't know exactly what you would call that, the altercations of some parts of your brain when you're having an encounter. Yeah. And that's fascinating to me, and I wonder how that holds up to scrutiny, his work. When it comes
I don't know. I know that's ever changing and ever developing. So I'm interested. He's always worth, checking into. This guy, he's at Caltech. He was recruited. He's a, full professor. He's a wonderkin, young guy, amazing. So, I think that's as much as I can divulge.
Yeah. But no, this is all fascinating. And the other two, let's see, I forgot that you're doing a standalone on John Mack, and that, he's one of my favorite people in the, that's really looked at this topic seriously. Just the wonderful way he handled the Ariel incident, the school children there, and just the persecution that he had for, looking into this topic, and how he was able to, rise above that, but anyway, he's such an interesting person. And did you learn a lot when you were working on that?
Yes. It's funny, whenever you're working on a project, especially, and I've done biographies on Billy the Kid, Lizzie Borden, a lot of historical figures, you start to, at some point, empathize and get into, as much as you can, get into their mindset of what they were going through, just through osmosis, not to the degree that of anything that's, a transference of psyche, but it comes close. And with John Mack, I would call Will Boucher, who is the head of GEMI, which is the John E. Mack Institute, who is the archivist there. And I would come up and I go, God damn it. And he'd go, what? And I'd say, I'm so upset that I never got a chance to meet him because I have so many more questions. And so sometimes I would have these questions and I would pour through all this footage and I would get clues to the answers. And so it was kind of backing into it. But he was an amazing mind. He was very childlike in some ways, his curiosity. He was a pioneer, and he was an easy target. There was a lot of envy. I mean, first of all, this guy in his day was an Adonis. He's a good looking guy.
Oh, yes.
Won Pulitzer.
Yeah.
In the 70s, Pulitzer Prize. And what he was doing was always revolutionary. And this was one topic that he thought, well, I can come in and lick it. It's some psychosis, and I'll call it the John E. Mack syndrome. And he ends up discovering that these people are all suffering from PTSD. And so what that means is they have clinical post-traumatic stress syndrome, and you can't fake that. And he would comb through their past, and he couldn't find any other reason for this than when these abductions started and when the post-traumatic syndrome kicked in. So, he thought he was going to be lauded for this. And And it turns out that he was, slowly, Harvard was laying kindling around his feet, getting ready to burn the witch, and this is the 90s. It's not that long ago.
Right. And I don't know if I must have told you this, that I did some work with antiques, helping a guy sell a collection. And he was also, he was a Harvard professor and knew John Mack, worked with John Mack, loved John Mack. He said he was a personal friend of his. And when I started talking about the accident, for those of you who don't, there's conspiracies out there that, he was killed, but basically he was extremely tired. He was in London, I believe it was, and forgot that, the left lane traffic, whatever it was, he didn't look when he was crossing the street. Got run over by a truck, basically. And
well, it was a taxi that I got run over by, and it was an off-duty,
taxi.
Yeah, off-duty taxi driver who had been drinking.
Hmm.
So that doesn't sound like a sleeper cell who was activated. At this point in his career, he had come out with Passport to the Cosmos, and he had already kind of had his big day, and that was with Abduction. And so by the time that book came out, it didn't have nearly as much fanfare at all, actually. And so he was kind of winding down his career, so it made no sense. So I think it's kind of a disservice to attribute any kind of, people are going to do that, right? Conspiracy. Yeah. If I get hit by a car, there's going to be people that would say there's 5 other Dean Aliotos who were killed that same day. Sarah Connor. I don't know. Dean Alioto isn't a normal name. So. Yeah. Well,
the double-edged sword of, what we have today with social media and stuff like that, there's conspiracy about no matter what it is, I get sent these things constantly all the time, and you always have to look at the source, of course. It's that way, especially with when you're looking at anything to do with UFOs. There's so many CGI UFO videos and AI created videos out there now, and I have people that know I'm into the UFO topic that are friends, and they'll send me some, well, what do you think about this? And it's like, no, that's that's not real.
It's funny. I am Dave Foley, who's in the documentary, is a friend of mine, and he's someone who, like, I'll reach out or we'll be talking, and I'll say, yeah, I'm kind of pulling away from the UFO space for a little bit. I need a break. I saw that. He hasn't run his last podcast since June. Oh yeah, his podcast is doing well. No, he hasn't. He has not had a new podcast since June. Oh really? Because I just dragged him out on a radio podcast tour for this movie, but on his own, really. Him and Tom. Yeah, with Tom, really. That's what I saw. Maybe I'm hallucinating, or maybe something happened. I'm not in the feed any longer. Yeah, DMT, could be DMT. But for me, I had pulled away, and he said, "Hey, Dean, now's not the time to do that. There's some interesting stuff coming." And then he's right. And so I had to kind of, come back to it. But I think it's always good to take a break and say, all right, I need to cleanse the palate and then come at it, in a hopefully stronger way. I got June 27th is the last time you had a podcast. Oh, really? I'll have to ask him about it. I'll tell him. Martin says, get your button gear and tell him I said it live on. Yeah. You added him. Yeah. Great. Good for you. You're canceled, Martin. I know. Yeah. I'll see how that goes. Yeah. So he was doing such a great job. He was getting guests that, I've said many times, I've been trying to get Alex Dietrich forever on this show. I just think she'd make a wonderful guest. But I watched her in some documentaries. She says, I don't want to be known as the UFO girl, and podcast UFO, maybe that's it. But she already said yes. And then I haven't been able to, she's not returned. Let me call her right now. Hold on, stand by. Would you do that? Yeah, let's do this live. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because she was interviewed, and maybe we heard the same podcast, and she said that Fravor said, come on 60 Minutes. When you speak on 60 Minutes, because she was reticent to do that because she didn't want to be known, like you said. He said, once you do that, then the story's out there. They'll always have to be online. That's it. And so she did it. But what it released was this kind of, I think, inner interest I'm not speaking for her, in it, and this discussion. And it turns out that she's funny as hell.
Yeah.
And so she's got real levity about it. And so she's contextualized in a way that she can talk about it without it becoming this intense thing or the scrutiny and everything. And so I'm excited about her kind of journey on this, because everyone who comes out there, it's got to be terrifying, because you are trained to keep secrets and everything, especially when you're in the military. And something like this, it's, I don't think we could have done this before 2017, December.
Right.
It just wouldn't have happened. I mean, I was able to get to people at Harvard and Oxford because of that, in part.
That's right. Yeah. It really has opened up a lot of doors, the whole thing. Here's a question here, and we will get back to this. Can you talk, thank you for this, Chris. Can you talk a bit in general terms about the alien perspective, at least in the sense of framing it and how you approached it? And before you answer, that's one thing you heard Michio Kaku say about, let's look at it from the alien perspective. That must have helped you, choose a title as well. But, I've said many times in the show, and that, we always think in human terms, and, we have no idea how developing intelligence can have, their thought may be so foreign to us that we couldn't understand, but yet we kind of humanize, every part of it. But anyway, there's the question. And if you would like to answer it and address how his question here.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Chris. So the gateway for me was that to look at it that, and the way that I framed it was I would ask everyone that I interviewed to take a moment, and whether it was saying, imagine that you're looking at a very primal tribe that's out in the jungles, and you're observing them. What would you think of them? Would you have feelings of superiority? Would you look at them and say, oh, let me change them, let me help them, let me interact with them? How would you do that? And so with that frame of mind, and knowing also that we are going to be that, we are going to eventually, if we don't, decimate ourselves, we are going to get to a place where we're able to actually travel the cosmos and go, and maybe it's interdimensional, wherever. But what are we going to do? Are we going to adhere to the prime directive, like in Star Trek, which, by the way, every single episode they broke?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. And so it became an exercise in trying to flex hypothesis about it. And so the difference is that the caliber of people who were opining on this were, Dr. Nick Bostrom, again, the creator of the simulated reality hypothesis at Oxford. It was Michael Masters out of Montana Tech. It was Michio Kaku. It was people like Jim Peniston. Why is this? And Peniston has his own interesting take on it. So even if it was an exercise, it was still a way to approach this that hadn't been done before. And you'll see in the first episode, there's some things to glean from that and framing it that way. So it was all built into the theme of the documentary, and was also part of, again, the animation, which we had to see it from their perspective. There's actually a really nice shot of through the craft that Peniston is touching, looking up at him. And so based on what he said, that when he touched the craft, what it felt like and what he was getting. So I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Yeah. And yes, I appreciate, Chris, that you put that in caps. Anyone that has any questions, please do put them in caps so I don't miss them. And actually, I'm going to say that we could take calls. Sometimes people call, sometimes they don't, but I will ask Chanel, producer. Yep, she said, give me a second. She was listening. So she'll set up the phone lines. But yeah, we could take calls, and, people can ask you, questions on this. But as far as where you traveled to film this, where are some of the places you went? I mean, I remember when you came back to New England, we met up here in the Boston area.
Yes.
Salem. I think it was Salem, actually, right?
The sequel, yeah. Again, it just started out with 15 interviews, and then it ended up being in England, France, at France's space program, which gets no press at all, but they've had their own NASA program, and gone into space. So we interviewed an astronaut who's also a biologist who works for the CNES, their space program, National Space Program. And then let's see, there was an interview in Germany, and then there was an interview in Canada. So those are the 4 countries. I feel like I'm missing one.
Plus, you're doing a lot of this during COVID. I remember you were having trouble trying to go somewhere. Wasn't it Canada? Was that where?
Yeah, I was going to interview Emily Trim.
That's right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we lost her in the meantime. That's very sad.
Really sad.
Just someone was just asking the other day when I was in the Twitter Spaces with Darcy. They said they saw the show I did on Chris, O'Brien when he passed away, and of course Chris and then Emily was like the week after, and they asked me if I was going to do something on that. And one of the only interviews up online is one I did with her and Randall Nickerson. So Randall's heartbroken, because he worked very closely with her, and he really was very protective of the kids from the Ariel incident. But eventually, I'll have Randall on, and we'll do a tribute to Emily.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
These are very sensitive people, and they've gone on to do incredible things. In the John Mack doc, I have 2 of the students, and and so I can't get into what we unearthed, but
is Francis one of those? I remember you were trying to connect with Francis.
Yeah, I'm trying
Chiramuda.
Back, yeah. So it was very much, I felt bad. Randall, these became his family. All the students, and he kept in contact with them and very protective, and that's that breaks your heart.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So the phone lines are open if anyone would like to call in. That phone number is 855-472-5483. That's the show number if anyone would like to call in. So let's see. You know what? I want to talk about, we're going to take just this little break. I want you to, I think it's about 4 minutes. I don't know if I need to run the whole thing, but do you want to talk about what you sent me? We went through this weird drone flap. I think it's still going on. I think I saw somewhere in Scandinavia, there's all of a sudden a bunch of drones recently. I can't remember exactly where, but it's still kind of ongoing, but it was a strange flap. Yeah. And so set this up, if you would, this video that you sent me.
Sure. Anytime I can use the word flap, I'm there for. November 29th of this year, my girlfriend and I are looking on the deck, and I see drones out there. In fact, I see 7 of them. It's off my deck in the distance about maybe a mile. And I'm looking at them, and I'm a filmmaker, so I use drones. And usually when you're doing a production, because I'm in Los Angeles, it's like, oh, someone's shooting a movie. But there's 7 of them. That doesn't make sense. You don't need 7, you just need 1, maybe 2. And they're moving around erratically and almost kind of crisscrossing each other. But, in my assessment, my knowledge of drones and using them at night and everything, these are drones. And so I just start videotaping them. And then the colors are green, blue, and red. And then occasionally they will flash into a ball, like a light ball. And it's like the light beaming out, emanating, and then it returns back to its shape and continues going. So I videotaped this. I'm thinking, oh, it's a prosaic thing. It's just maybe there's a light on it or something. And I forget about it. And then December 15th comes around, and the Jersey drones happen. And it takes me like a few days to recall that moment. I went back and I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, Jesus, this is the same exact thing. So I teased you and I sent it to you. What do you think of this? And then my daughter put it on TikTok, broke it up into a few clips to get reactions of this, not saying what it was one way or another. And you can actually see it, which is at Captured Pictures Official. And it's there, and it kind of blew up. One of them has like 28,000 views. And I also put clips on behind the scenes of the making of the documentary. But if you look at this, it's really, really bizarre. It's frustrating. I was just talking to Bryce Zabel about this and a few others. And the thing that's frustrating about it is that the government's reasons for this is pretty weak. They're saying, well, it's not us, and kind of like they're not worried about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm worried because I've been hearing reports that other drones that have tried to go up to check it out have been turned off.
They die. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of concerning.
So what did they say? This is the funny thing and the irony of it all. They say, nothing to worry about, but we don't know what they are. And how could you say both of those together?
That's a contradiction for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want an answer to it. And if you don't, I don't know. I mean, all the theories that I've been hearing, like the balloon that you saw from China that got shut down, perfect example. Those keep on going on. I'm sure it's continuing to go on. And I'm sure that we do the same thing. And so if we spotlight this maybe too much, maybe there is a cause to say, yeah, there it is, that we also have drones in other countries. But the behavior is just really strange. I mean, as an example, for me to fly my single drone, I had to schedule a time because originally the shooting day happened when there was a game at Dodger Stadium. And they said, you can't be within 5 miles of this.
Wow.
So I had, so there was regulations and stuff, and to see all of these drones, it's just, it's disconcerting, and that they're over Langley and other places. And what about the drone flap that happened way back a few years ago in
Colorado?
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. I'm not gonna, again, if they are extraterrestrials and want to take us out, they can do that at any moment. But one can easily go, oh, it's a recon. It's a recon. It's happening right now.
I connected to the guy that wrote a lot about the drones in Colorado, and I asked him if he thought there was a connection. His opinion is no. I don't know. I can't remember what his reasoning was, but he didn't think there was any connection. But anyway, here I'm going to play this again. I don't know if I'm going to play all 4 minutes, but we'll at least play part of it. Here we go.
Sure.
Just went. Okay. So there's a shitload of drones here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Are you sure they're not planes?
What is going on? Whoa. Looks like those two are going to hit each other. Just got really bright. Those have got to be helicopters. If they're not drones, they're helicopters. What the fuck?
But did I hear there was one of them you think was a helicopter?
Yeah. Well, at that point, I'm going through my Rolodex of prosaic explanations, and I'm going helicopter. It's got to be a helicopter. That. And it probably was. I mean, it absolutely is a possibility, and same with the drones. But drones don't usually have that light and get super bright. And so, and some of the people made comments on TikTok that, well, it's, planes coming in. I'm like, yeah, no, LAX is definitely to the left of me. And these aren't going at a steady decline going down. These are kind of circling. And so, yeah, I mean, again, and I always like to kind of present evidence and say, hey, what do you guys think? Because we're all trying to sort this out together, right? And so, I'm not going to have the answers. What I'm, going to bring to it is my experience working with that technology, shooting out of helicopters as well. But there was just too many of them. That was the weirdness. That was the high strangeness. That should not have happened. I've never seen that before, and I haven't seen it after.
Wow. And so that was, you said this was back in November?
November 29th at around 8:30.
So that's I know that the drones started sometime in November. They are seen in other places, but we had.
I only heard about the Jersey ones in December.
Yeah, no, they started in November. I'm not sure exactly where, but that's when people started reporting a lot of unusual, drone sightings, and then they were reported all over the world. In Pine Gap in Australia, in Germany, and bases there in England, and looks like let's see, do we have a call? Yes, we have a call. We're going to bring in a caller here. And let's say hi to Gabriella from Palm Beach. How are you?
Hey, Gabriella.
Fine, thank you. Hello. Hello, Mr. Host and guest, Mr. Dean Alioto. You have a movie on Amazon Prime called The Portal. I wonder if that's based on any true facts, and tell us what you can about that movie. And was it fun to direct?
I had a blast.
And I'll keep my answer off the air. Thank you for the show.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you.
So yeah, Portal was a fun project. Peter Duke wrote this script, and it's funny because I did the McPherson tape. Sometimes I'll get scripts that are like kind of quasi found footage-esque. And so this had an element to that, but it was great. We shot it in a very short amount of time. We used a drone for that one as well. That was about ghost hunters they're competing ghost hunters. It's a horror comedy, supernatural comedy. And they get their competition's location for this haunted house, and they get the jump on it. And they go to film there, and then, weird shit happens, of course. And so she asked, was there anything that was affected? It was just a fun movie, a supernatural thing. We folded in some details as much we can with the supernatural, but it wasn't really UFO related.
What year was that?
It came out in 2019, I want to say.
Oh, geez, I didn't even know. We knew each other, but I don't remember actually when that came out. That's
really? I'm hurt.
I know, you must be. Yeah, I tend to do that. Sorry. No. So yeah, after you get through this batch of, you've got the experiencers, you have, the part 2 here, and John Mack. You can explore other things as well.
Yes, I'm going to explore the knitting. I'm going to explore knitting, a whole documentary, maybe a 3-part series on knitting.
Wow, that should be fascinating.
Yeah.
And paint drying. Yeah.
I keep saying I'm not going to do anymore. This is it. And this is what I have to say on this. But then I keep uncovering certain things that I go, oh, geez, this should come out. People should know about this. But yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to do another feature film, and again, kind of cleanse the palate and come back. But and I'm also curious other films like James Fox's The Program came out. There's a couple other ones that are coming out, and so I'm always keen to watch those and see and make sure that I'm not overlapping or doing what they're doing.
Well, I think the program was a good idea to really look at the Washington D.C. take. What's going on there. I think that's very important. And I mean, you would think that some other countries in some sort of way may follow suit a little bit, but I haven't really heard of anything. Have you?
Of the program, or as far as
no, I'm talking about hearings. We're having these hearings, and someone just asked in chat earlier if we had any idea when the next one would be, and I have no idea. But I mean, for a government to take it as serious as the U.S. has recently, I think is pretty fascinating.
But they already have. I mean, in France, they came out years ago. Canada, so I feel like they're more open to it, whereas we've had to fight through some dogma and cynicism to get to the place that we're at. And it wasn't until until the Navy said, yes, it's not us, it's not our foe, It's something else that all of a sudden was like, okay, now it's on the table of conversation. But what's interesting again is the fact that you've got both sides of the aisle talking to each other, saying my estimable colleague, congressman, this or that.
That's right.
It's a Democrat. Yeah. That is amazing that the only thing that they're coming together on is UAPs. What does that say?
That's right. Yeah, one of the very rare times, and that was really interesting to be in the room both times during the hearing and seeing that, you know, right in front of you, where you know, two different people across the aisle were they weren't arguing with each other, which was really nice. And let's see, someone was asking if you were really saying knitting. That was actually a joke.
Yes,
you can never take.
I'm a card-carrying smart ass. I take my work very serious. I do not take myself serious. So, however, I may do it anyway.
You might do it, yeah. But boy, I can't believe how fast this hour has been flying by. So, anyone would like to make a call? We have we can take one more call if anyone is up for that. The number is 855-472-5483. I'm going to pull that off the board here soon. Actually, if you're going to call, you better call right now because we only have 7 minutes left on KGRA. And so I hope this goes really well for you, Dean. You know, I mean, you have a good publicist. I know that, and just an aggressive one. Very good. So I'm glad this is working out. I know you had everyone in the film business has had a hard time, you know, with getting the product out there and being able to trust what's going to happen after 1091. Is that what was the name? You know, there were some issues.
Oh yeah. No, I was never associated with them.
Yeah.
Is that a caller from Montreal?
Oh yes. Okay. Let's talk to. Thank you for catching that, Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Martin. Hi, Dean.
Hey, Andrew.
Yeah, as you guys are aware, Stephen Bassett of the New Paradigm Institute started something called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, and I think a couple of Martin's guests are on that. Darcy Ware, Mark Antonio, and David Foley. I'm just curious, Dean, like, are you very encouraged that this thing will kind of encourage disclosure? Because I'm kind of 50-50 on it. It's good that Hollywood may create content to help disclosure, but I'm also worried that they could be a tool of the Pentagon or the government to create disinformation. So I don't know what you think of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance by Stephen Bassett.
Sure. Let me vouch for Darcy, Paul Hynek, Dave Foley, and I think there was someone else that you mentioned. These are very reputable people. I just had lunch with Foley, and he's always questioning, always like me, kicking the tires of the genre. No one is being co-opted. The government's able to do that themselves. There's enough Richard Doty's out there. Sure, you know, Hollywood doesn't need to be recruited for that. We're making our own movies, whether it's evil aliens or good aliens, though Spielberg is doing a big event UFO movie, which I'm super stoked about. So yeah, am I encouraged? It depends on what your definition of disclosure is, right? Because there's the disclosure of the government come out and saying that yes, aliens are real or UFOs are real. Well, they've pretty much done that. So what else? Do you want to see the tailpipe of a UFO slapped on the congressional hearing table? I do. That would be nice. Maybe an alien body. That would certainly be groundbreaking. But for a lot of us that already believe in it, it's already disclosure's kind of already happened. And for experiencers, it's happened on a one-by-one basis, whether they're chosen or not. And so I think I would like to have kind of that evidence with regards to the disclosure of the aliens coming. That's a whole other conversation, and maybe a whole other documentary. However, we do look into that certainly. But yeah, I mean, these are kind of exciting times that that this is being taken serious to this level. So I kind of feel like we got the snacks and the appetizers, and now we might be moving into the entree with this phenomenon.
Yeah, thank you for the call, Andrew. I appreciate it. We have to wrap it up, so thanks so much. So where can someone catch your film, The Alien Perspective? Apple TV and Amazon?
Apple TV and Amazon, and it drops tomorrow or midnight, maybe tonight. But yes, The Alien Perspective.
Excellent. Well, Dean, as always, it's a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, and we'll be in touch. Talk soon. All right, everyone. So don't forget, next week we are going to be live in studio at James Fox studio, actually in Vermont, and check that out. The following week have Ryan Graves. So we have a good 2025 starting here. Thank you so much, everyone, and remember to keep your eyes to the sky.